From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Welcome to this Viewpoint special presentation. I'm Joe Parris. We are only a few days out from the 2024 Idaho May primary election coming up on Tuesday, May 21st. And to get you all set for Decision Day, we have the expert on Idaho elections. And I've seen your questions floating online and into our inbox and text line, so we will touch on the big topics that you are asking about. So let's welcome in our guest. Welcome back to the program, Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Joe. It's always a pleasure to be here.
I think it's a loaded question, but I guess, 4 days out from the election here, I would imagine you guys are very busy.
We are very busy. We're feeling it. The campaigns have really grown in intensity. Everyone's trying to get out the vote. As I was mentioning to you just beforehand, I think one of the really shocking things is just the amount of money that we're seeing stream through Idaho politics. Over the last 48 hours, we've seen over $1 million in independent expenditures. So those political action committees sending out all the mailers, TV ads, other things that are going on right now in Idaho.
So it seems like a real rush to the finish. And I guess, what are you in your second year or third year as Secretary of State now? Have you seen anything like this, even as Ada County Clerk, in terms of just this flood of money towards the end?
No, this really is unprecedented. This is my first primary election in this seat compared to when I was at the county role. But even compared to the past with Secretary Denny or Secretary Usursa, there's just so much more money, and in particular, money coming from out of state. I know there's a lot of people trying to track everything that's going on, and I've seen one person, a voter, posted a photo where they had 12 different mailers just on one day in terms of both attacks and opposition, and it was just about one race. And so there's a lot going on right now. In addition to just at the county clerk's offices, Trent and the team at Ada County are getting everything ready, getting the supplies distributed for voting next Tuesday.
I guess that's a good reminder. When you get these pamphlets up on your doors, I get them every day. My wife and I come home and there's a new collection. People are paying for those. And when we talk about independent expenditures, when we talk about campaign fundraising, a lot of the spending is on just, hey, here's who we are.
That really is where it is. It's all the advertising, all the information being pushed out there. And I would say for this, we will easily eclipse the most amount of money spent on legislative races. I think one of the shocking things about those numbers that we're seeing are there are no statewide races. There aren't any of the big top of the ticket races going on right now. So really it is the legislature that's drawing all the attention.
And in terms of out-of-state versus in-state money, I guess, is there any trends that you're able to observe, or is it one of those things where we need to wait for the dust to settle and get those all reports in?
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to really break down where it's all coming. I do know, talking anecdotally to candidates, they're seeing a lot more money coming into their donations in terms of their candidate campaigns. But really the thing that's getting all the attention is these independent expenditures from out-of-state entities that are participating in our state. And I think it's unusual for Idaho to see so much of that activity. We're used to having politics, a lot of it here in the hub in Boise and then spreading around the state. But now seeing these groups that have policy agendas or whatever else really coming in. And in particular, two of the races getting the most attention are Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder and Speaker Mike Moyle. And that's been really interesting for everybody to watch as well.
And in terms of, I guess, reporting the numbers coming from out of state, I understand that in recent years, the legislature passed a new law so that in-state and out-of-state donations or contributions are now, I guess, filed the same. What's the intricacy there?
Yeah, it's not, the new law doesn't quite work that way, but really anybody who's spending money in Idaho politics has an obligation to report it. That's part of our job, is to oversee campaign finance. I think you're very familiar with our Sunshine site. So if you go to voteidaho.gov under candidates, you can see all the money coming in through our campaign finance portal. And it's really just to be able to say who is donating, what are they spending it on, where are they spending the money. And that really gives voters transparency to see, is the money coming from out of state, or is the money coming from corporations, or is it coming from just local individuals in the district? And we see all of the above. We try to share that information as best as possible. I know the political junkies like us are the ones who really watch more closely when it comes to this information, or other members of the media are taking that information and trying to share it now as we head into the home stretch. Part of our job, though, is to enforce that, to make sure everyone's following by the rules. And, one of the challenges, too, because I know you guys get this on the 208 all the time, we monitor the spending and the finances. We don't monitor the content. So when you guys do verify and you're doing the fact checking, we'll leave that to you guys. In terms of just because of the free speech protections on political speech, we don't get into oh, so-and-so said this about me and so-and-so said that. And we do see some of those complaints coming in as well.
Because there is protected speech, and I know that, one of the big stories this past week was well, there's this out-of-state group and they're lying about voting records. And it's like, well, it's not, maybe you could say it's not ethical or it's not appropriate, but it is legal.
Yes, I think that's one challenge. And as a candidate myself, I can easily relate to everyone, and it is frustrating. And seeing the nastiness and kind of the vitriol that we're seeing is really particularly frustrating because I don't think it fits our state. But unfortunately, it is protected speech. I jokingly like to say we fought very hard so that we could speak badly about King George, and that really comes to the core of our country. The First Amendment is a strong protection, and so political speech is one of these tough things. And I know, again, both for voters who are seeing stuff and saying, like, I know that person, this isn't true. I mean, again, you guys cover that all the time. It would be nice if there was more civility in our politics, but unfortunately, we're seeing that play out right now. If someone's in D.C., I don't think they're too concerned about what's happening here in Boise.
I would agree with you. In terms of this cycle and in terms of the intensity, before we move on to some of these questions, at what point in this cycle did it kind of raise a flag in your office that this is different and something is much different this cycle than it has been?
It happened pretty early on. I would say even early April, we were starting to see more money and just questions come in. But it really kicked in gear probably in the last 2 to 3 weeks where the complaints, so in addition to a huge influx in money, our office is working through a larger volume in complaints. We've probably got double to triple the number of complaints that have happened in previous cycles.
And how long, does it take to investigate those complaints and get something done before Election Day? Because if you have so many complaints and only so much time.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Like, one, we can't handle all of it by Election Day. So some of this, it will take us after the election to work through. Some are really easy. Like if someone didn't put paid for by on their materials that they sent out, we contact them, we likely issue a fine, candidate moves on, and it's relatively easy to cure. In other instances, we are having some aggressive battles that may involve legal action. We have a political action committee, for example, it's a retired career politicians, that we are in an active debate with them on what the obligations they have to comply versus not. And so I think that will continue to play out for the coming weeks. We won't get it resolved between now and Election Day. And so that's just part of the role, though, is to work through that and to make sure that everyone knows that there are rules and that they're being followed.
Well, we'll have plenty of developments to follow on the 208. All right, let's get to some of the election questions that I've seen some of the viewers ask. And my first question for you, what is the biggest question that your office is getting right now? Is there a singular question or a topic that phones are off the hook, we have the right answer?
No, I don't think so at this phase. A lot of what we're doing is trying to support the county clerks. Like the county clerks are the ones who will be really running the elections on Election Day. And so earlier this week, we had a call with all of them across the state just to check in, make sure things are set up, things are going smoothly. We're preparing in our office for the post-election audits so that we'll be going through and a lot of questions there. I mean, typically at this time, it's just people wanting to know, where can I get an absentee ballot or where do I find my polling place? Very frequently we get the question on, do you have a voter guide? I think right now that's of particular interest because there are other voter guides being distributed across the state right now, very politically motivated ones, so we're getting those questions. But really, our biggest challenge right now is just to get people to show up and vote. You know this, I know this, is the primary election will determine so many races in our state because we really are a very red state here in Idaho, but even in the bluest parts of Boise, the primary will be where these races are determined. And so how do we get more people to show up next Tuesday? A lot of people are going to focus on November. The 2024 cycle, the presidential election is going to draw a lot of attention in November. But for Idaho, this is a significant election coming up.
And I was actually just looking at the how many registered voters Idaho has, because we always have this like 1 millionth registered voter and then some people unregistered, whatever. As of this morning, as of Thursday morning when we're taping this, Idaho has 1,173 voters that are registered. 583,000 GOP related, 125,000 the Dems, and then 275,000 the registered voters are unaffiliated. When you take a look and you hear those numbers, are those changes to you? Are those different, or is this kind of the Idaho we've been used to?
This is the Idaho we've been used to, but one of the things, and I've shared a lot of information over the past 6 months, is we are seeing a lot of people move to our state, coming from other states. That's no surprise to anybody. Just go out on the interstate. You can experience it firsthand. But one of the things in terms of our politics that's interesting, there's a lot of narratives out there, but what we see in terms of registration is actually Idaho is getting redder. A lot of the people moving to Idaho from other states are coming and affiliating as Republicans. We're seeing that trend, and it's not a trend unique to Idaho. If we were to go to, say, Colorado, something both you and I are familiar with, we would see the opposite trend. There is just this self-sorting going around the country, and with the explosive growth that we've had, we are just seeing more engagement. And I think some of the money and the things we're seeing in politics are a reflection, too, of more people coming in and more attention on our state.
And a good refresher for the May primary, not everyone's going to get the same ballot. How do we determine who gets what ballot?
Yes, not everyone's going to get the same ballot. It's all based on where you live. So depending on largely what legislative district you're in, what congressional district, we do have our congressional seats up. And then there are some other local issues. So specifically like school bonds and levies that will be on some of the ballots. Our office works with the clerks to make sure, just depending on what districts you live in, that each of the ballots are specific. I think one of the unique things about this cycle is the precinct committeeman races. They've always been part of the primary process, but there's way more attention. Driving in this morning, I saw a billboard for a precinct committee position. That's not something that I've seen in the past. And so I think some of that attention at the very, very grassroots level for the political parties is also going to drive some of the turnout and participation in this election.
Because the precinct committee people, and especially with the GOP-dominated state, they have a lot of say in state party politics. And when you have a big say in state party politics and your party really rules the state, well, then all of a sudden these inter-party elections, they become pretty big.
Yes, they do. And this has always been on people's ballots. But probably more often than not, it's just been one person did it because that's the local party person who, helps get people out to vote, gets people registered. It has become very contentious, particularly in the Republican Party, but all across the country, just more local engagement. And so these are the party positions. And they're interesting too because, we talked about campaign finance. They're not regulated by the same campaign finance rules because these aren't elected offices like the legislative offices or some of the others. But it's fascinating because we're seeing way more money in those races just as well. And so a lot of activity coming up for next Tuesday.
I guess, do you see this as more voter engagement, or is it purely, more fundraising from the political forces that be?
That's a great question. I don't know that we know yet. I think we have to let the dust settle. One of the things our office is watching is just turnout. As someone who loves elections, wants to see as many Idahoans vote, we're hoping that we get increased turnout. We've got ads going all over the state, both on television, radio, and others, just encouraging people to participate. We've got some fun ads with trivia for the election, trying to get people engaged.
I saw Cartoon Phil.
You saw Cartoon Phil asking, I think we got 6 different trivia questions going around the state right now. And really just trying to make elections fun, hopefully getting more turnout, because this is important to our state. I always like to joke when we look at some of these races, you compare presidential elections, which get a ton of attention. That's one of the biggest driving forces when people vote, to a race like ACHD commissioners. Anybody who's driving around the valley has opinions about ACHD, and surprisingly, we see way more impact in terms of the presidential elections than these local races, despite all of us feel the local impact of these decision makers. And so hopefully we can get more people out there and make it easy. I think one of the big things we did this cycle is we updated the voteidaho.gov website, just trying to put more information together in one space to make it easy. I know you're a big user of that, whether that's pointing people where to go to find their polling place or using some of the cool data tools that Gabe and the team in our office have put together. Trying to, again, make elections accessible and interesting. Part of my role as secretary is to be able to reach voters where they are and make it so that they can participate in this process.
Gabe and your team has done fantastic, and I'm excited for election night for a big unveil. We won't talk about it right now. Okay, so as a primary election goes, Republicans against Republicans, Democrats against Democrats. In terms of different ballots out there, if you're not registered and you're new to Idaho, what's the deal here in the Gem State? Can you register at the polls? Yeah,
really, Idaho has a great election system in terms of just accessibility. So the window to request an absentee ballot has closed. We had just over 67,000 people request absentee ballots. About half of those are in. Anybody watching who has one, they should probably go drop it off here soon if they want to get their vote in to be counted. Early voting is active as we speak. And then on election day, so both early voting and election day, if you've moved to Idaho or if you weren't registered previously, you can still register to vote at the polls. You need to bring photo ID and a proof of residency. You can go to voteidaho.gov to see what those IDs and residency documents are, but it's real easy to do. And then you can vote at the exact same time. I think that's really important. Hopefully we can get more people out.
And when you register, just to be clear, you can affiliate with whatever party you choose.
Yes, great question, and your trigger reminded me. Yes, you can pick a political party if you aren't registered, so you do have to be a registered Republican to participate in the Republican primary. You can be registered unaffiliated or registered Democrat or any other party to participate in the Democratic primary. I think one of the big things to let people know if you are unaffiliated and you just really you don't identify strongly with either political party, you may still want to look at what's on the ballot, because the nonpartisan ballot, we do have one available, but those are largely judicial races that are uncontested. So one of the things we can often see at the polls is someone being really dissatisfied when they get a ballot and there realistically isn't any particular choice on it.
Yeah. In terms of the, I guess, 275,000 voters that are not affiliated, can you affiliate at the polls?
If you are currently unaffiliated, you can affiliate with the political party at the polls. Now, if you're already a member of an existing party, so you're already a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, you cannot change. That was March 15th was the deadline for anybody with a party to change, but all those unaffiliated people still can pick a party if they choose to.
Very intricate. Okay, so in terms of the absentee ballots, we touched on it quickly. It is different in some states. Here in Idaho, if you get it postmarked by Election Day and you get it into the office, is that good enough?
That is not good enough in Idaho. In Idaho, you do need to get your ballot returned by 8 p.m. when the polls close. 8 p.m. on Election Day, the polls close at the polling places, but it also closes for every form of voting, whatever ballots we have in hand. So make sure to get that absentee ballot in early. So if you're going to be mailing it, I encourage you to stick it in the post box soon, because sometimes there are delays with the Postal Service. Otherwise, go drop it off at your local elections office. That's the easiest way to make sure it gets counted. If for some reason you can't get that absentee ballot in time, you can still go to the polling location. They can void your absentee ballot and let you vote at the polls if you need to.
Because election offices and the clerks around Idaho, who you're in touch with on a daily basis, they want people to vote. They don't want to turn people away.
They want people to vote. They want people to have access. And I think it's important for people to know, especially as we talk about absentees, we have lots of security measures in place. So not just here, say in Ada County, but all across the state, everything is networked, that information, to make sure that everyone can only vote once. Whether you got an absentee, if you didn't return it, we know that. We can cross-check and make sure that only one vote is ever counted. And we have lots of tools to pursue things to make sure we have a very secure election here in the state.
Turning to the changes in the election calendar, Idaho is now down to 2 election dates.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just down to May and November. I guess the loaded question here is, what does that do, I guess, to the cycle when you get rid of the March and the August elections?
I think one of the things we're going to start seeing is, in some ways, it makes it easier for voters, because you don't have to think about, wait, there's an election coming up, what are we voting on? That is simpler from that perspective. In terms of when you go to the polls, though, one of the challenges will be, we're already seeing more questions on the ballots, because we put more races together on each of the respective ballots. And historically, a lot of the school bonds and levies, those financial questions, have been on the March or August dates. We're going to see that more. And so for this May election, we do have more school bonds and levies than we're typically used to seeing on these ballots. And I expect as we go into November, we'll see that again. But really, the main thing is, you can go to voteidaho.gov, find your polling location. Your polling location should be consistent. The clerks really try to keep it the same place every time, so it's familiar to voters. And I think if we can get the mindset, everyone already knows November is when we vote. May is also when we vote here in the state of Idaho. And so hopefully we can get more people out to show up in May.
Seen a lot of good questions online about what's a bond, what's a levy, and I think we have some graphics that'll match our conversation here. Let's start with the bond. What is a bond, and what is the threshold to get it passed?
Yeah, the simple version of what is a bond versus what is a levy, a bond is one-time money. The school district is asking for a loan in order to, say, build an elementary school. And so they're asking for a large lump sum of money that will be paid off over time. So any Idaho homeowner can relate to this. It's just like your mortgage. They just need a large lump sum up front to be able to do usually a capital project. A levy, on the other hand, is an ongoing stream of funding. So a levy is just getting permission to collect additional taxes that they can use for ongoing sources. Now, that levy may be temporary in time, but say over the next 10 years, but it's giving them an ongoing resource. Sometimes they do that to do small capital improvements, but a lot of times that's just operating expenses. That's new staff, like teacher pay, or new teachers because of growth in the district. And so that's really where you see the divide. The threshold for a bond is higher. It's a 2/3 majority to pass a bond, versus levies can vary depending on what they're asking for, but it's not to that 2/3 level.
And just to get even more intricate here, I saw viewer questions about plant facility levies. I know there's one on the Fruitland ballot. I don't have the guide in front of me, but a plant facilities levy is confusing because it's got different thresholds, as we see here on the graphic here. Basically, my understanding is the bigger the ask, the higher threshold.
Exactly. The more money, the higher expectations in terms of voter approval for that. I think this gets into, I mean, one of the toughest things we see for voters is getting information, whether it's about the candidates, but especially about these issues, because you're being asked a lot of technical, financial things. If you read through the language, the legislature has added a lot of additional language. I think in the attempt to really inform voters, but at the same time, all that additional language can be confusing. I think, if anyone has questions about what, levies or bonds they have, is reach out to the district for additional information, because they're the ones who put forth the question for voters in terms of that funding.
And I can't speak for every school district, but when I was doing my research for a lot of the bonds and levies, you'd be surprised at how fancy some of these websites are. And, admittedly, the schools want these bonds and levies to pass, so they will do everything they can to make it, digestible and people can understand it. Hopefully, in their perspective, encourage people to vote for it. Okay, moving right along here with some other questions. I know that with the bonds and levies, people want to know what happens if they don't pass. Can you keep just running them again? And what does the cycle change look like?
Yeah, well, one, we have less elections, as you've already noted, in terms of what can they do. But if they don't pass, usually this has a big impact on the local budget for the school district on what they can do. So especially those ongoing levies, a lot of times a levy may not be new. It may be just renewing an existing levy. And it can impact, right now there's been a lot of coverage about school closures here in the Valley, just with the growth and everything going on. This is closely tied to some of these funding questions. And so for a district, yes, they can come back each election to ask for that. And we do see that from time to time. But other times what we usually see, if they do come back and ask again, that it somehow has been modified. Lots of times the district will take the feedback from the community like, oh, we're asking for too much, we need to trim it, or we need to provide more information. People don't understand what we're asking for. And so hopefully the districts are learning through that. I do know that they all talk to each other in terms of learning from each other about what to share with the public. And this is just one of those challenging things with the participation, is trying to balance how much information without drowning people in too much information and getting people to participate. I will say from an elections office, one of the challenges we see is not everyone even participating in those questions. We will see drop off on the ballot from the top of the ticket. So especially as we head into November, a lot of people showing up to vote for president, but not always getting all the way down, especially those bonds and levies at the very end.
I had a very intricate question that this leads me to. If you make a mistake on your ballot, you find yourself in the ballot box, you put the wrong thing in, can you get a redo, or what happens?
If you make it, so if any voter goes, they make a mistake, they mark a candidate like, oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Right away, don't stick it in the ballot box, but go to the poll workers and they will reissue you a new ballot. They'll spoil that ballot and reissue a new one. That's true for absentees, any other form of ballot, but you can make corrections. And we keep track of that. It's part of the things that we audit for, is keeping track of all the different ballots issued. That includes the spoiled ballots as well as the ballots that are cast, and linking that to the voters that show up.
And we've mentioned audits, and I know there's been a big national conversation about audits really since the 2020 election. Here in Idaho, what does the audit process look like, and how has it changed in recent years?
Yeah, so one of the things is just a couple years ago, Idaho added post-election audits. That's where our office sends out teams of people to go and do a hand count to compare the results. So a particular precinct, we randomly draw the precincts, and then we'll go and do a hand count and compare that to the results that the county published on election night. It's a great process. One of the things we've added, and I think it's awesome to see for our community, is we've reached out to the accounting community, so our CPAs and governmental accountants, to ask for volunteers, and we've actually gotten a good outpouring of people who are interested in helping support the audits, so that we can go through and just be methodical about checking that. We also check, who showed up to vote, the number of people that showed up to vote, just reconciling all that information. I know you've covered one of the really neat things that's happening here locally is Trent Triple, the Ada County clerk. He recently launched the Ada County Ballot Verifier. That is a one-of-its-kind in-the-nation tool to be able for the public to go see the ballot images. And if someone wants to audit themselves, Ada County has put it all out there to see. Here's the actual images of the ballots. You can count the votes if you want. They've also posted the images to show what the machine read the ballot to say. I think it's one of the greatest examples of transparency, and my hat goes off to the team at Ada County.
It truly is unbelievable. They have every single ballot cast, digitally scanned online, and then of course there's no identifying information in there. It's all not random, it's all anonymous. Okay, so volunteers, another thought that was triggered. Poll workers. I know Ada County's looking for some. What does it look like, I guess, statewide?
I think one of the biggest things, it's one of the trivia things we have out there, is just the number of poll workers. So to run our elections across the state, it will take roughly 5,000 poll workers. These are community members who are willing to give up their entire Tuesday to help make it possible for the rest of us to vote. And we really do require dedicated people who are willing to step into these roles. A lot of times you and I talk about elections and the rules, and we can talk about that, but the people who are really doing it are those poll workers at the polling locations. They're the ones enforcing our rules, issuing the ballots, making sure everything is done properly. I'm extremely grateful. I encourage anyone who votes this Tuesday to thank the poll workers, because it really is a sacrifice to take that time. And as you said, Ada County is looking for poll workers. I know other counties, Kootenai County, over in Bonneville County, people are looking. They're doing trainings right now for all the poll workers. If anyone is interested in becoming a poll worker, they can reach out to their county clerk's office or visit voteidaho.gov, and there is a link to be able to sign up so that your county clerk can contact you to become a poll worker.
And you'll get the training, and then it's about a one-day commitment, you know, the
Yep.
8 a.m. to 8 p.m. thing. And I'll just say from anecdotal, I've spoken to poll workers, some that have done it for a long time, some that have done it for the first time. It sounds like a very rewarding experience, and the folks that work in it say it's fun to be a part of the process and see democracy work firsthand.
This really is a unique opportunity. People who do it love to do it. They do it for years and years and years. Just the other day, I was in an event for the Daughters of the American Revolution, and a woman came up to me. She's been working as a poll worker for 60 years.
Wow.
She loves this work. She did it when she was young, has continued to do it. It's rewarding too, and we look at politics. Of course, you guys cover it, the nastiness that we talked about earlier. Being a poll worker is a way to be in it and not be in the thick of the politics. This is an apolitical position. You're not there as a Republican or a Democrat or anything else. You're there just to help facilitate voting. And in order for our republic to work, we depend on community members to step up and do these things. So we really appreciate everyone who steps up to do so.
And making the day easier for poll workers is something that all the voters can do. And one thing that always comes up every election cycle, electioneering, buttons, T-shirts. Can you wear a T-shirt with your favorite candidate in, or what are the rules about, I guess, decorum at the polling place?
That's a great question, because actually we changed some of our rules in the legislature this year. And so we actually expanded the bubble for electioneering communication. And so what that means is when you head to your polling location, you shouldn't have to go by people who are handing out leaflets or other things. So there's a 250-foot perimeter around the entrance to the polling location where there are no yard signs permitted, nothing else. And so for people headed to the polls, please take off your political memorabilia, like leave that at home, put the signs out in the yard, go out and do everything, wave for your candidates wherever you need. But when you go to vote, that's really meant to be a safe place so that all voters, regardless of their party affiliation or opinions, are welcome to share in that space.
Leave the buttons, the hats, the T-shirts, I've seen dolls and all kinds of things. Just leave them in the car. Okay, well, we're running out of time, I'm told. So I did want to talk about the voter guide.
Yes.
And I know that we covered this on the 208, but we'll rehash it here. Folks had been asking for a state-issued voter guide, didn't quite get through the legislature. Do you hope to, I guess, push it next year?
It's one of the things we're going to continue to push for the voter guide. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see where the legislature is at, particularly after this election, because this has been so contentious, and we have seen more partisan voter guides being issued. So there's been a wide array of things that we've seen distributed to voters in this election cycle. We've actually gotten a lot more calls from legislators saying, hold on, wait, what's going on? And saying, yeah, it didn't come from the state. And really my view is we want there to be a resource for voters to know what their choices are. One of the biggest challenges that we see is voters often know who they're going to vote for president, but they don't know who their legislators are. They don't know who their county officials are. And as we get lower, school boards, others, people just want to know. And going home and doing Google searches doesn't always make it easy. You don't know what district you live in, what other information.
You don't even know what names to Google.
We don't know what game. Yes, exactly. We see people who request absentee ballots, not because they're gone, not because they actually even want to vote absentee. They just want to have the list so that they can do some research. But I really think you should be able to hear from the candidates themselves and get the information out there, have something, and have more information. If you want to do deeper research, get a link to go to their website. So we're going to continue to push that. I do think there's going to be a greater appetite after this cycle, because with all these out-of-state mailers and other things, people are like, hey, people are saying these things about me. I want to get the truth out there and say, well, a great way to do that is to provide a fair, even-handed platform for that, and having our office issue a voter guide. I'm hopeful. We don't have it for this election coming up, but by November, I am hopeful, just like in Ada County they do, to statewide have sample ballots that people can go look up their polling place and see an actual sample of the ballot they'll be voting on at home.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't plug our election guide. It is more of a list of what's on the ballot. It's not as in-depth, and we of course have our coverage. We do have a graphic though, if you would like the KTVB voter guide. It'll give you everything that is on the ballot in your area, and then the bonds and levies and everything. Those are explained. You can text VOTE to 208-321-5614. You can get the KTVB voter guide. Again, as a member of KTVB and as a voter here in Idaho, I would hope that we can get an expanded voter guide from the state of Idaho one day. That is my personal opinion, but we will find that out from the legislature. Okay, as we start to wrap up here, any other thoughts that we didn't touch on that you think voters should know?
No, the really big thing is this is a significant election that we've got coming up. Please get out and vote. I think this is really important for our state. And if you have any questions or any issues, visit voteidaho.gov. It's a great resource to get all the information you need, no matter what part of the state you live in.
Voter turnout. Do you have a guess at this point?
I don't know. They do. There's so much activity. I really do expect higher turnout, and I think the big question is just how much more does it go up?
What do you think the range would be? I guess 30 to 40, 20
yeah,
to 40?
Somewhere like 30, probably 35 to 40 is what I'm hoping for. But I hope more people, headed into November, we're easily going to see record turnout this year. We're preparing for that for November, but let's hope in May we can get close to there as well. And absentee numbers are up significantly, so that's a good sign.
Well, we'll get through May, and then we'll have you come back for November. We'll do this all again. Well, Secretary of State Phil McGrain joining us here on this Viewpoint special. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share this video with your friends and family. A lot of good insights here. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always go to voteidaho.gov, or you can go to ktvb.com and take a look at our voter guide. Again, Election Day coming up on Tuesday. We'll see you then.